Nothing gets recorded. And
You
here
think?
we are. We're live with the author of the incredible book called The Sniper Mind that's coming out today. It's not coming out in 6 months like we talked before, or in a month. It's out today. And how do I know? Well, because I have this email. And if I click and show you the email, which came in this morning, as you can see right there, it shows, look at that. It says the Amazon.com order of The Sniper Mind has shipped. Those beautiful 4 words. The book has shipped. And so right there, you can see it's legit, my name. I'm not just showing you some fake deal. And it's just the book right there. And the book is by David Amerland. So David is with us today. David, big congratulations from me. Excellent. I
Thank
mean,
you. Thank you so much.
I think I've said before that the book is superb on many levels, too many to count. And I know you've spent tremendous amount of time researching it and working on it and, you know, basically putting all of us aside, even your friends and everything, until you get it done. And we sincerely appreciate being part of this journey anyway. And so I just wanted to give my sincere, wholehearted thanks for writing the book and sending me a copy of it before everybody else got it. And just wish you the best with the book and everything else because you deserve it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
And here
It's
we have
always
Zara. Before we hold on, before we
yeah,
talk,
yeah.
you're the guest of honor today, so you get to listen all these accolades, everything else. You get to talk a little bit later. So here we
I don't think it should work like that.
We also have Zara up there. Hi, Zara.
Hi,
The floor is
Oleg.
yours. The floor is yours.
Thanks for putting this together, David. I got a similar notice from Amazon, and I'm waiting. But thanks to you, I have read the book, and it is just so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I really think it's a life changer. It isn't just about business. It's about building yourself and training your mind. I love all the decision making. I mean, it comes down to making decisions, and whether they're on the spot or big. As I see Michelle is here. I think he talked about the plan and the mini plans
Yes.
a week ago or something
Yeah.
like that. But
Michelle is awesome.
I think a lot of times we don't notice how many decisions we make in a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are constantly driven by a decision tree inside our heads and emotionally driven all the time. We don't realize that, and because we don't realize it, when it comes to a critical decision, I mean, it's easy to sort of make a decision. And we're going to have coffee, and it's going to be espresso latte, right?
Right.
With chocolate cake.
Then yeah. But then we get into something a bit more critical, and we're using the same decision tree in our heads. We don't realize that, and because we don't realize that, the decisions we make most of the time are emotionally driven, which means that they're inherently wrong because the variables we pick to drive them are not assessed properly. And if we make enough wrong decisions, we end up with, having lives that have gone down the wrong path. And you say, how is it possible? You're guiding a life at the end of the day, right? You're not a stone, which is taken by gravity and rolled down a hill. So how is it possible, to actually have a life that is not going the way you want it to go? And then when you actually think about that, yeah.
I just wanted to say a couple of suggestions, since I'm doing the hangout.
Yeah.
So, just so you know how the rules are. So today is a big celebration, which means we don't want to see a serious face from you. Just smile all the time.
No.
Keep it light. No serious faces.
This is awesome. And I always have on a social level, I'm always, because I'm always sort of hanging around with people who talk about relatively serious things. It's always difficult for me to just chit chat about something which doesn't mean anything because I just can't do it.
All right.
It's a fault in my character. I'm sorry.
Right. We also have, I want to make sure we don't miss So as you can see, there was supposed to be a hangout between the two of us, and now we got all these people showing up out of the blue. I mean, can you believe this?
It's a party.
It's a party, exactly. It's a coming out party. The book is out today. Get it from Amazon everywhere if you don't have it. So we have Nina Trankova all the way from Bulgaria. Hi, Nina.
Hi, David. Hi, Oleg. Thank you. I hope
Nina, how are you?
Fine, I'm great. I didn't sleep. That's why I'm not for the in front of the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm behind my butt. I forgot yesterday, and when it was 3 o'clock, it didn't mind. So.
Yeah, I've only got about 4 hours sleep myself. It's been
Congratulations. I've been blessed to meet you and to have your big smile. And my copy is packed for Christmas. I'm visiting South Tyrol to see my daughter and family, and it's already there waiting for me.
awesome.
And I was very glad to be part of the discussion, the reading, and also the conference in Sofia. And I'm thrilled. I'm very glad.
Nina, you don't have to rub it in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll watch the replay to understand you better, Oleg.
No, it's just the story is that I've been waiting for David to visit for over like 2 years now.
Has,
and so when somebody says,
when we're talking,
I'll tell you, wait. It's a sore spot, and that's what I mean.
We have to quantify this. When we make decisions, right? And Oleg made this decision, and he lived about as far away from me as he can possibly still be in the Western Hemisphere. It's like, my God, couldn't you go any further away?
And so here I am. I disappear from a Soviet bloc country, thinking I'll be here on the West and David will come and visit. So what does he do? He goes to another, well, it's ex-Soviet, but still. Go figure.
Karma, right? I mean, there's no accounting for that, seriously.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you, Nina. Certainly appreciate you stopping by. The deal with not sleeping is something, this is David's territory. So you can see by his nodding head that you do survive it eventually. I don't think you should have, not slept just because the book is coming out. I mean, talk about devotion, but I'm sure David appreciates it.
I mean, it's been incredibly hectic time because I have all these things to do in terms of interviews and articles that need to be written, and I've got these emails, and at the same time, I'm working on another book, and that's
here we go.
Yeah, that's going into a new phase, which needs a lot of time to deal with suddenly, and my usual work level with companies that I advise is getting into that time of the year when they all have their boardroom meetings, and
so let me getting a bit funny. Can you share anything about the new book with us at all? Since nobody else is listening.
I can't at the moment. No, my lips are sealed, and this is a legal requirement. Just can't just yet.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry. No, we understand how that works. All right, Michelle, how are you?
Thank you, Oleg. Very well. Hello, everybody. Just one word. We must be honest with the audience. If you apply the book, you will get too much work and decisions to make as incredible. It's amazing. So yeah, it's a kind of sacred fire. Congratulations to everybody. David, I wrote that to you and we've talked about it. It's fantastic. This week is going to be a great kickoff for the English version of the Sniper Mine. They already asked the version in English, so that's very good. If they want it in English, I think that, well, the contacts that I have today, they really want to read that book. And yeah, I've sent some signals about that, as you know, and really I'm happy. It's just the beginning, and it's a real strategy. Bringing that book as a detonator, that's great.
That's really cool. And
Michelle, I'm sorry.
Michelle is actually a sniper.
Exactly. Go ahead, David. You do it.
And people know it.
Yeah. It's that hard look in his eyes when he actually tells you something.
Yeah. So Michelle is one of the people that David mentions and talks about in the book, and so he's Michel, why don't you tell us about your sniper background, because you know it best.
As I said today, as I wrote back in a post today on Google Plus, the biggest part is when David asked me to, well, propose to participate in that book, and I said, I can't talk about these things here. It's impossible. And I was completely wrong. You know, it was just awesome to, at first talk about it and write about it. It was in 1986. I was a commando in, well, I was in Germany, then in the French mountains near Switzerland at the Rousse. And this was one of the best moments in my life. At that moment, I was a karate champion. And I was training in the mountains, had to come back in 36 hours to fight, to win my championship, to run back over there. Everybody was following me, and I was, like walking on air, on 3 centimeters from the ground. I was so trained. It was, it was just awesome, amazing. And I was one of those guys able at night to leave alone and with my 75-kilogram package and, get down in the canyon and climb again alone, completely alone, and have to put a rope for the other guys and just, keep them safe. And I was also a specialist in bush. And believe me, I love that. It was, crazy, because when you're alone, you can't, you can't be 10 or 20 or 30 people just, trying to fight. You had to be very smart, and that was really, I'm so happy and glad to talk with people about that. But I must admit one thing, I never had to do bad things, and I just wanted to say that it must be one of the best experiences I had into my life. And David was right. I was doing things because of that training, and I think that, yes, we don't know it, right? So it was difficult to talk about it, but now I'm so happy to know why I did that and how to bring this, well, in real experience as a businessman and as I'm doing right now together, because we have serious problems with our program, right? We should find some time, I don't know where, when, but we've got a lot of work to do next week. So thank you for the question, Oleg, and thanks to David. And believe me, this is a great journey.
Michel, if you don't mind me asking, what was the longest distance you shot and got your target? What was the longest distance?
So, can you repeat your question, please?
What was the longest distance in terms of feet that you shot at whatever the target or the test?
The longest? Ooh, that should be 800. Well, between the training was really between 600 and 800 meters.
Okay.
You must know one thing. I'm a hunter, chasseur in the mountains. So in the mountains, the biggest problem is not the distance. The biggest problem is to get the guy with the trees, with the rocks, with everything. You have so much topography is really bad in the mountains. So you have to climb, and you have to hide, and you have to be careful to not fall and kill yourself. And the first thing is to be safe yourself. So it's very difficult. But I was specialized in mountains, Oleg. So, well, actually in Afghanistan, hunters are over there. So the things that you can adapt yourself in every kind of situation. Yeah, just for information, I was summer trainings in winter, which means we didn't have skis. We had to walk in snow. When you had 1 meter 50 of snow, you just had to walk. Whoa. I saw giants falling. I saw giants falling. A 2-meter giant falling like that. He was, dead because, dead. It's just an image. The guy couldn't. I think that the best thing is to be, 80-kilogram guy, 180 maximum, and really light and very in great shape, because it was really a training very, very hard. Between you and me, just one word about this. we had a conference recently with David and Errol Dubla, as you know, here in France with YouTube Live. Well, okay. And I had Michel Rochelet, ex-colonel from the French army with me. And he said, he's also patently from this commando training. And he said, oh my God, this is one of the worst memories of my career. And we both lost our right ear with a shot and, well, an accident. And well, I just wanted to tell you that, yeah, that's so quickly done. And you have to be really, really, really well trained to do those kinds of things. It's not easy, but it was a great moment.
Amazing. It sounds like we need to do a hangout series called Sniper Talk with Michel. We get all these stories coming out and stuff.
That'd be awesome. We'll have to do that, definitely. Oh, that'd be really cool.
We should totally do it. And then for those who are listening, if you don't have the book, if you're wondering if it's a good book or not, I can tell you, I can actually prove, based on what Michel said, it's a great book. Because you can see what people like Michel can do and what they've done in the past. Can you imagine David writing a bad book with these kind of people being around him? He interviewed over 100 of these kind of people. Can you imagine what they would do to him from 800 meters if the book wasn't good? So this is 100% proof that this is a great book, because David is obviously still standing, or sitting in this case, and Michel is obviously happy about it. So it's a great book. Get the book.
Okay, let's say that.
It is. Yeah, it's really cool.
Sounds good.
It's yeah. I was gonna say it's pretty amazing. Michel has had quite a journey, and he's able to synthesize quite a lot of skills, which come into play in his business life and his own life. And a lot of the people I spoke to when I interviewed all these snipers, they had that ability in common. And the thing about it is, a lot of them were applying it subconsciously. You know, they're not thinking about it, but they're doing it. And then, you know, when you actually discuss it with them, they go, "Oh, that's what I've been doing all along." You think that's quite fascinating, because it's ingrained. Your brain changes, and I can't stress this enough. You change your brain, you essentially change your life. You change your life, you change your perspective, and then reality changes for you, because the decisions you make are based upon assessments which are different. And that's what's so fascinating. You know, of all the organs in our body, the brain is the only one
what you're
that can
saying,
change
David,
through external. Yeah.
Yeah, and people think that you are crazy or different, you know, when you are in civil life. And this point of view is fantastic, because I wanted to make an homage to all the veterans as you talk when you talk about them. This is really really. Oh, Gina, she makes
Gina's here. Yeah.
Today. And Doug, right?
Who would have thought? Gina showed up too.
Hi, and Doug's here too.
Doug, hi.
David, congratulations.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Yeah. Sarah.
Hi, Dara.
Hello. Hi, David.
All right, group hug. Come on.
We need cake.
High five.
we need a transporter. Where's the transporter which we need?
We do need a transporter.
Okay, well, I'm looking for a picture of a cake.
It's serious.
While we're looking for a picture of a cake, check this out. You see this?
Oh, wow, it's coming fast.
Wait, I don't see it.
I've been waiting since April 4th. You see this?
Yeah.
You know,
And now finally, we're coming to the end of the journey. So with that said,
Oleg has an unfair advantage, you know, because Amazon is right at his doorstep. He's practically living next to it.
That's true. That's true. Actually, not practically. It's in a little different city, but close enough. Yeah, that's true. All right, so let's go turn the floor over to Gina. Hello, Gina.
Hello. I'm not ready for the floor.
Okay.
Trying to find my seat.
Way too late.
I am so excited about the release of the book, David. It's been such an honor and such an incredible experience to be part of this all these months. And that doesn't even take into account how much the book is helping me and affecting me and changing my thinking and incorporating all of the different practices that I already have in place. There's this seamless joining
of sort of everything in my life, even my time with the dogs. I mean, it's just spreading, it's infiltrating my whole life.
Really cool. That's really cool. That's awesome. We've all been talking about it for months, and I've actually been sharing all these snippets, and you guys have been building on them with your own contributions, perceptions, ideas. So it suddenly feels like, oh, it's out. Now more people can actually come into this conversation. I think it's a conversation we need to have. Yeah, the world has changed. We live in different times, and we don't consciously realize that because we're carried along by development and evolution and a stream of progress. But when we stop and think and look, 15 years ago we had none of this, right? We had no Facebook, no Twitter, no Hangouts, no G+. 18 years ago there was no Google. So in that time, less than 20 years, things have changed so drastically that it is physically impossible for our brains to have adapted from an evolutionary point of view. It doesn't happen, but they do adapt if we force them to. And this is the magic of the brain, right? It's our brain. We can reprogram it if we know there's a need, and how do we do it, and then how do we create those new patterns that become part of our survival pack in the 21st century. And that's what it's all about, really. And the more people that come into this mindset, I think the more the world will change. And we all know that this change has to happen, because the complexity isn't going to go away. The uncertainty isn't going to go away. The decisions need to become better. We can't keep on making bad choices. So, this is awesome. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so basically, for those who are wondering, you understand that the way the book is, if you're looking where to find the book in a bookstore, you can look at it under snipers, you can look at it under mind, and now you can also look at it under dogs.
And it should be under cake as well. It really should.
Voila, the cake.
There's the cake right there.
I would love to just say one more thing, you guys. And David, I think one of the beauties of the book is how much we each can make it our own. And you're not prescribing set. There's a lot of malleability, and we can each kind of take parts of it in and incorporate it in our very own way, and it offers up a lot of options for creativity, and I really like that. So, okay,
that's really awesome, and I think that's the strength of it.
David's phrase, recalibrating the brain.
Yeah.
I love that phrase. It's like we're always assessing, or we should be always assessing.
Yeah.
And the change,
the eyeballs here.
Yeah, and the changes take place in increments.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's the whole thing. And on that, Nina has put a question in the chat about the way politics and governments are looking at trust now, and how everything is in a sort of state of fluidity regarding how we create that trust. And we know that trust is the glue that holds everything together. We also know that trust essentially arises out of our own ability to assess things. In a state of confusion, we have zero idea who to trust. So what do? We live in a state of constant arousal, mistrust and distrust. Everywhere we make always the wrong decisions, and they accumulate. Other people make wrong decisions, and their wrong decisions then justify our wrong decisions. And the whole thing goes to pot very quickly. And really the question is, how do we then get around this? How do we learn or relearn to trust? And it comes down to that, what you said, Zara, the ability to now reassess things, to look at things with clearer eyes, to make better assessments, which lead to better choices, which lead to better connections. And suddenly, then things become clearer, because then we realize how trust works again in our relationships, in our communities, in the connections we make. And because it becomes clear, our arousal levels become lower, we become more stable, our connectivity works better, our decisions work better, we feel happier, and then suddenly things work again. And I think, this is critical. It's again, that perception barrier, the perception filter we apply. So Nina's question comes straight off her own perception of the reality around her. And it's not just Europe, the whole world is in a state of uncertainty right now.
Yes.
And so we need to relearn to modify the behavioral patterns of the past, which helped us survive, into a new reality. So in many ways, we're living in the future now, and we're explorers in that country. You know, they say the future is the unexplored country. It is in many ways. So we are basically setting the modalities that will help others learn how to navigate it.
Exactly.
And if we don't, if somebody doesn't understand it, then there's something small coming from 800 meters, and that should take away.
I must say, I can't help feeling you took away the wrong things from the book.
No, I'm totally right. You got to remember where I'm coming from. That's how you get it. Anyway,
when you say that, I'll tell you something which, and cake, we can't go wrong with cake. I'll tell you something which I used to sort of say in the past corporate life, when I was when I was wearing a suit on a daily basis. And it was like that. At the time, we had a trend called on-the-job training. And once I had to tell somebody that teaching them a lesson they'll never forget is not what we mean about on-the-job training.
It goes with the other famous statement, which is, making an offer somebody can't refuse, that kind of deal.
Well, there you go. See, I can see your education has been of a certain slant.
Oh, I'm totally cultured both in the Russian and the American culture. So I'm putting together the best of the two things together to make things work. Exactly.
OMG, you are unstoppable.
That's why I wanted to do the hangout, because I figured nobody can kick me off.
See, it talks from a position of power.
Exactly. All right. Anybody else? Anything in addition to what's been said already? Or David, if you want to, say a few words about the book or about anything else you want to say, like maybe something slipped about the new book, possibly. We're not going to mind. So.
Well, I can't talk about the new book just yet. But it's tangentially linked to this one, obviously. So every book for me is a little bit of a stepping stone. So there are some, it's not quite a sequel, but it actually builds on what the Sniper Mind actually explores. But really, every book is, in order to work, has to be an answer to a question. This one really is, how do we operate? How do we survive the 21st century? How do we become better versions of ourselves? Which is how we move into the future, how we move into the time where we feel comfortable about who we are. And the book basically does just that. It looks at people who operate under incredibly complex, incredibly difficult and adverse conditions. And they manage just fine. And not only do they manage, but they manage with a fluidity of factors and variables around them, and then they bring about the outcome they want. Think, how do they do it? They have no magic.
Let's talk a little bit about the negative thing, and that's what I wanted to bring Michelle in. Michelle, David just mentioned that all jokes aside, people do it and they survive, and like in David's book, he talks about the Hell Week for the SEALs, that 80+% of people drop off because they just can't handle it. I'm sure there's some, like in your field in the past, it's basically snipers and commandos, people who are superhumans, as we call them. They do get things like PTSD, and they get, there's been obviously plenty of people who committed suicide after coming back from wars. It's not like everybody can handle it. Can you, without going into a 24-hour discussion here, describe what makes the difference between people like yourself who went through hell and been able to come out on the other end in a normal state, if you will, and still lead a normal life, and those who couldn't handle it? What makes the difference? All of you are going through the same training, all of you are kind of in the same boat, and yet some are able to get past it and the other ones can't.
This is an excellent question. A lot of people were wounded when I was at that time a commando, right? On 36 persons, we were only 13 to get this one. This is you remember, David, this is the real one from that moment.
Yes.
Oleg, without kidding, if you don't think about your feet, you're dead. If you don't think about sleep, you're dead. If you don't think about your gun or the things that you really need to take care about, you're dead. You must be in great shape. So the first thing, that you must be an athlete. You must be, athletic. You must be strong and stronger than others. And if somebody hits you, you hit twice, and you must go faster. So you must always be like a beast. You must be, I should say, smart and aggressive. Okay, and this is how it goes out there right now when you have to do business, etc. So I was under the pressure only, I should say, 15 years later. So if you want, this is the dark side of life, right? You have your brain, you have people. People don't see the same thing as you do. As David describes it so trained to rationalize this part in civil life. And the real problem is that when you're out of action, when you come back to civil life, well, it's not like real life. You understand that real life because you want to think about your feet. You want to think about anything else that people don't really care about. So you're just simple things, and you ask yourself simple questions and to fix other priorities that are not priorities for people. That I think that the real problem is that we see things, as I'm doing again today, and thank you, David Amerland, you gave me again the way to restructure what I've learned, where I failed, and where I had to come back with a great way to think and ask simple questions. And when you talk with an 8 billion man, an 8 billion businessman per year turnover, the guy, he only talks about water and cold, which killed, the troops of Napoleon before Moscow, in Russia. It wasn't the battlefield. It was water and cold. Which
it was always the Russians, always.
Yeah, voilà, c'est ça. Yeah, in Russian. Winter, right? So that's all. The thing is that we ask ourselves simple questions. I'm a passionate guy, but I always see what's important. So I think that the biggest problem is to match with people and talk about their interests. That's really difficult.
No, but back to my question, Michelle, is you were able to get through all of this and come out in one piece, and other people came out in one piece too, but they could not cope with life after the fact. What makes it different? All these guys, other guys that can cope with life, they're all strong, they're all capable, just like you were. Yet they couldn't cope with it.
Michelle might not always be able to answer this because he's actually done it. And when you do it, you have the perception bias that you did it, right?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question, but it's quite simple. You must love adversity. You must love difficulty. You must love playing with death. Yes, certainly playing with death, but being aware of it. It's just that, as I said to David, they wanted to send me in OPEX, and I said no. Why? Because I don't want to kill anybody. And why? You're trained for that. And I said, yes, but I don't know if I'm going to live with that. So, special, I think. That's all. If you want to stay alive and stay sane in your head, just be you. And that's what I shared with you today, and especially with Gina. Just be you. Become you, and say no when you have to say no, and say yes, and be good when you have to be good, right? Very good.
What do you think about this? Do you have some insight on this?
Yeah, well, actually, having spoken to 100 people who do this kind of thing, there are a few things which, time and again come up. And Michelle has touched upon it. One of the things which you have to do, and I've covered this in the book, is essentially you have to embrace the difficulty. You stop thinking, for instance, while you're out in a cold, tired, sleepless way, oh, wouldn't it be nice to get some sleep? That doesn't factor in your thinking anymore, because the moment it does, it unfocuses or defocuses your brain. Your concentration goes, you feel suddenly weak and hungry and tired and small, and the world thinks big and the problem seems massive, and you can't do it. If instead you think, this is my reality, I'm in it now, and I'm embracing this reality. This reality, however hard it is, I'm equal to it. And special forces training is the same the world over. You know, whether you talk about the French sniper training or the Rangers in the US, or some of the snipers I talked to in South Africa, they all have the same mentality, or the same mentality is drummed into them. Essentially, and the easiest way to say this is they fake it till they make it. You face a difficulty, and this is what you think: I can do it. You don't think, I can't do it. You think, I'm equal to it. You don't think, oh, these are so many problems, how can I solve them? You don't think that. You say, more problems to solve, let's tackle them. And that changes the way you tackle it. You know, it's the classic problem of the glass being half full, half empty, right? What's in the glass is always a certain amount of water. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, it doesn't change. If you see it as half empty, what do you think? I haven't got a lot of water, I'm really thirsty, it's not enough, am I going to find water ahead? So these are the things you're focusing on. Your brain now connects all the different centers. They're the wrong centers to connect. And the reality it presents you with is a difficult one, which you cannot handle. Then neurobiological changes kick into your brain, neurochemical responses which begin to dampen your higher executive functions. You don't feel strong, you don't feel clever, you don't feel smart, you don't feel able to survive. You don't survive. If you think, well, I have half a glass of water, it can go a long way.
Oh, yeah.
You don't feel the same stress. Your reality changes. Now all you see are opportunities. You think, I'm okay for the time being. I'm going to use this and go into the next stage. And you know what happens? Because your brain is thinking differently, your choices are going to be different, and the opportunities you're going to be presented with are also different. And if you take this into a business environment, it works the same way. You know, a lot of the times you face a real problem, and what do you think? The world has crushed you, you feel small, you feel about to fail, you think of all the difficult things, and you can't find a solution. And if somebody said, you know, why don't you take a deep breath, back away. Let's look at it differently. You may well be able to find a solution.
So you're saying the difference between people like Michelle who did make it fine at the end and people who didn't make it fine at the end is that the lack of proper attitude on the subject. Is that what you're saying, essentially?
It's attitude. That's exactly right. I mean, when they look at Hell Week, what they put everybody through is physically impossible. You're not designed to make it. So what are they looking for? They're not looking for somebody who got through it. I mean, if they wanted that, they would go to a gym and they will say, you know, who's your best athlete? Or speed, or, you know, that kind of thing. What they're looking for is the ability to have the attitude which synthesizes that character which doesn't give up. And the problems, the physical trials they give you in Hell Week, because you're cold, you're hungry, you're really tired, you're sleepless, and things only get worse. They're looking for that attitude.
Bless you. And I think
Sorry about that.
in business, you could look at it the same way. If you don't have the right attitude to succeed, no matter how hard you try or how much education you have or anything else, you're not succeeding anyway. But if you do, I mean, I was watching this movie about Ray Kroc, you know, the founder with Michael Keaton, and actually, great little flick. You know, it was an interesting story and everything. But in the end, you know, when he became famous and everything, and you know, made all this fortune and fame and everything else, they asked him, what was your one secret to getting it done? After all these numerous, they showed how many times people slammed door in his face, and he would go around talking to people, and they're not even looking in his direction. I mean, there was all this negative stuff was going on in his life, you know, and he had to lie to his wife, like everything is hunky-dory on the road. It was just really sad to watch the guy go through this kind of pain. But in the end, he said the thing he says persistence. That was one word he used, is persistence. And I think if you combine the attitude with the proper training and you combine it with persistence, that's the formula for success.
Yeah. And it's the same in any area. I mean, Michel spoke about very specific things in his military field. He talked about his gun and his equipment and the training and the physical side. And these are all tools. You can't have a sniper who doesn't understand how his rifle works, doesn't understand how his equipment works, and you know, he wants to sleep 12 hours a day. It doesn't happen, right? But if we take this into a business environment now, or any kind of, in our own personal lives, if we don't understand the tools that we have as a person at a personal level, then we can't operate, we can't function. And the problem is, because we live in our bodies, we live in our lives, we didn't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I have to be David Amerland. You don't have a choice. You have to be Oleg, and Gina has to be Gina, and so on.
God forbid, yeah.
Okay, because we don't have that choice, we think nothing of just going through things, even though we're not really prepared. But really, the thing is, we need to understand that there's an intentionality in our lives. And the moment we become intentional, then we start thinking, and then we start planning. And you can't plan without preparing. And if you prepare, you think, what do I need? If you're going to live in Russia for 6 months or a year or 3 years, and you need to function there. Yes, but you need to learn something about the culture. You need to understand it. You just can't go there and expect to function perfectly, because it's not going to happen. Yeah. Same thing in America, same thing in any other country. So I think this is what Michelle is making a very critically important point about. We need to prepare, and preparing means all these things, and all those things create the attitude. Once you've prepared and you have the attitude, then you don't stop, because you've prepared.
Right. So don't forget to get the book. Get the book. Let's make sure everybody understands. All of these things we're talking about are in this book in various forms. Some of it is. Yeah. Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, to get the point, David. This is a great conversation. Just to make it short, what I really do today is to make a big difference between strategy and tactic. This is really my great, wow, from this year. Just between you and me, this morning, I had a feedback from a conference with Adidas, this sportswear, just 15 minutes.
Yes, yeah.
They were talking about soft skills this morning. And so people said, oh, Michel, yes, he talked about this a couple of weeks ago. So the thing is that you have technical skills and you have hard skills and soft skills. And the huge difference between strategy and tactic, what is it? A strategy is, what game are we playing? On which field? How am I going to win the game? And then you come in with your specific skills, tactic skills. So if you can separate these two, I should say, fields, you can really understand what you do, and you must understand then who you are, what you can do or not, and do you know or not? If not, learn. Do you know how to? Well, you can also work and try harder to do it. It's quite simple and quite easy to understand, well, that you don't mess up everything and mix up everything. You just make a huge difference between strategy and tactics. That's all. That's all.
Exactly.
And work hard. Voilà.
I agree. I think.
In case you're wondering what it looks like in the stores, except for the picture of David, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And you can pick it up at all the stores. I think one of the things that in this discussion that's interesting, I just mentioned in the chat to Nina, is the salespeople refer to WIIFM, and that's always creates a problem for a lot of people, because it's, on one hand, for those that don't know, it stands for what's in it for me. That a lot of people pay attention to this, with kind of like a radio station, like a FM radio station, and it's part of our survival mechanism, because if you don't do anything for yourself, then obviously you're not going to survive for too long. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we did not have this inherent desire at some point to do something for ourselves, because if we were all Mother Teresa's, we wouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. So then it becomes basically a struggle between doing stuff for others, which is absolutely essential, and doing stuff for yourself. So it's a constant struggle, because you're trying to figure out, everybody tells you, you need to do stuff for others. You need to think, if you want to be successful, do something for somebody else, not for yourself. And no. So you have this constantly conflicting things going on in your mind. And part of it, I was just reading an article by a cognitive scientist, and he said that a lot of things that we do have a lot to do with our environment, people around us, because say ourselves with somebody else, but at the same time we go along with them, because if you're standing at a party and there's a bunch of people talking and they're all talking about how much they hate Trump, for example, I mean, let's use a typical example, right? Then you, somebody who is actually voted for him, would feel very awkward saying anything against it, because you have a bunch of people talking about opinion different from yours. So because you're trying to kind of fit in, you wouldn't be making the comment about how you actually feel. So this deal with this mass hive mind, if you will, or being part of the group, makes a huge difference for all the people. It's not just some people, all the people. And so there's always this conflict between, you know, most people, from what the guy was saying, is that you have this constant conflict about fitting into some way, because you have to deal with people. You know, without dealing with people, you're not accomplishing anything either. So you have to deal with people, and at the same time, you need to be true to yourself. And so you're constantly in this conflict state. And I think having a strong mind, like David's talking about in the book, how you can work on your.
Nina muted Oleg, right? So.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Oleg,
okay.
Oleg, you muted.
Gina, Nina, Zara, David, Oleg.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, no, Nina just muted me. So, you know, I basically was saying,
sorry.
Nina, you know, I know Michelle, you know what can happen if you keep doing that.
It has to do with cake, I'm sure.
No, nothing to do with cake. Cake is Zara's territory. Me and Zara on the cake deal. No, so what I was saying was it's a constant conflict.
Yeah.
Trying to get yourself in the mix, at the same time being able to fit into whatever your environment is, without necessarily being corrupted or molded into something you're not. And I think it's always a challenge. But what I was saying before I got rudely interrupted and muted, what basically David's talking about in the book is this third party ability of yourself, not third person, ability in your own mind to be able to adjust your own mind. So as you can actually work yourself on your own mind as if you were a coach, which is pretty incredible. And that's what I think David was talking about being able to work to get your mind into a different state and adjust your mind, adjust your thinking, adjust basically your whole being because of that. Because pretty much mind, everybody knows mind controls everything else. I mean, your body, I mean, I can't move my hands without my mind controlling the hand movement. I mean, there's nothing you can do without the mind. So the mind is just this amazing thing, and you're actually able to be almost like two different people, to be able to adjust it, to have the right attitude, move in the right direction. And I think it's pretty amazing that we're able to do this with our minds. And I think that's the reason we came to the point we came today, I think, in terms of evolution, is that by being able, otherwise, you know, everybody would be, you know, throwing stones, living in caves.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you're making a very important point in that all the skills which took us to this point here today have or are in many ways conspiring to trip us up moving forward. And this is again what Zara mentioned earlier, and you said that essentially we are all products of the environment we live in, because, and here's how we unpack this, right? Wherever I am right now, there is a host of data, sensations, which my body is capturing, translating, inputting into my brain. My brain is processing them, and those sensations produce emotions, and those emotions drive me. So whether I'm cold, hungry, tired, whether it's daylight or nighttime, whether it's producing a dichotomy in my mind because I should be asleep now and I'm not, you know, all these things together are creating a sensation. And I have to make a conscious choice whether I will allow some of that sensation to affect the way I feel, which then will color the interaction we're having, or I override it consciously and go another way. And this is the struggle we constantly have in the modern times. We live in a world where, I'm going to say everything is artificial, but it's not. Everything is new. and we're not really suited to it quite. So we have to relearn how to adapt to that. We have to say, okay, here's our caveman tendencies or a caveman mentality. It served us admirably to this point. How do we move forward? And that's a key to it. That's a key question. And I think you made the point so beautifully when you said all the things you said about self-interest and how we use it, how do we overcome it, how sometimes it works in our favor, and how sometimes it doesn't. And that's crazy in itself, right? Either it does or it doesn't, but it doesn't always. Sometimes it's actually the right yardstick to use and say, you know, what's in it for me? And other times it's completely wrong. You shouldn't be using it. But how you recognize these two things and actually apply that differential, which makes you behave differently, is again that what you just said. How do you step outside your head, which is a unique ability we have, and see yourself, see your behavior, and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that there, and then you change. I think, you know, that's magic, that we can do it. The fact that we have to learn to do it is what's key. Okay, and that's the situation we're in right now. And you know, the book itself, you know, 12 chapters. Pretty much each chapter gives you a step. If you apply all 12 steps, you transform yourself completely. But even if you apply one, you see a transformation in the way you approach things.
Right. And one thing I wanted to show, I have these images that I wanted to show. And so here's one of my favorite images from the past, right here. And that's, David and I spoke about this earlier. People who don't follow the sniper mind become what we call snipees.
We threaten people now.
The reason you don't see snipees is because they're all dead. I mean, that's the idea, is that if you're not a sniper, you're a snipee, and if you're a snipee, you're dead because they hardly ever miss. So the trick is, don't be a snipee. Go out there to Amazon, go out there to Barnes & Noble or whatever bookstore you have, pick up a copy of the book, and no problems. So we're trying to see, the reason I pushed the book so hard is because David was gracious enough to actually list somebody I know in the book. And so I'm trying to get the name out there to as many people as I can. It's a self-serving thing, really. You know, we're all being honest today.
That is so true. Yes, absolutely.
So, but seriously though, it is a, you know, certainly, it's almost, I mean, the way I look at the book is it's a common sense. Some things in there obviously are new, would be new to anybody, because not everybody has gone through this. You know, the stories like Michelle's, you know, telling there, it's not something you see a little bit of it on TV, but anything you see on TV obviously is, you know, it's not necessarily real. It could be made
TV,
up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then this is when you're hearing from somebody who's actually gone through it, it's a totally different ballgame. And so in the book, you have a lot of these things that are common sense and you know, make sense to do. And a lot of people even know what to do, they just don't do it. So if you're that kind of person who knows a lot of this stuff and you read it and go, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, of course I know that. All that. It's a reiteration, and also it's almost like a little bit of a nudge, at least the way I read it, to, yeah, you know this stuff, so then go ahead and apply it. Because what's one of the big problems that people don't do in many things they do is the application part is missing. The action is not there. You have all this, you know, I can do this, I know this, you know, this and that, but then nothing gets done. You know, my own dad, unfortunately, was one of these people that he's got all this education, he's got all these plans all his life about doing stuff, but in the end, there was nothing actually done in terms of any kind of serious meaning, because he would not take appropriate action. And that's one of the things that David talks about in the book, how for all these snipers, it's one of the key elements. You do the training, you get to a certain point, and then you have to take action. You can't just become really, really good at something if you don't actually do it. You have to do it. And so that's one of the key things for business, I think, that in the book, it kind of pushes you, nudges you to say, look, these are all the things that are common sense. Now go ahead and actually do it if you want to see the results, because otherwise there won't be any results. And so all these things, the book is like a guidebook. At the same time, it's a historical perspective. At the same time, you know, with some of these stories from these different snipers, some of the stuff is funny in the book. They make some comments that are actually pretty funny. A lot of the stuff obviously is somewhat tragic when you hear about, I mean, there's this one story in particular, which David and I didn't cover at the end in our last hangout, but I wanted to cover. It's this story about these British snipers on an island. I can't remember now which island it was. David, you know what I'm talking about? At the end of the book?
Yes, that's right. It's in the Falklands War, really.
Exactly, exactly. And so these guys are basically this, one particular guy from his perspective, they were completely, I mean, there was no way they would be able to come out of this alive. No way. And you think somebody would run somewhere in the cave and hide and hope that, I mean, essentially you have a situation, I won't, spoil everything, but you have an island, small island, and you have a ship passing by this island, and you have some of these, not that many people.
It's a battle cruiser. Yeah, this is the insane thing, right?
And so this ship, this battle cruiser, I mean, can be shooting directly at these people on this dinky little island, which they're sitting right there basically like ducks, waiting for somebody to hit them, and they're still fighting back. And it's like, how do you fight back a ship with, I don't care how good a sniper you are, you can't do much to a battle cruiser from the shore of the deal. And you read about these people and what was going through their mind and how they actually still fought this battle and stuff. It's mind-blowing to read this stuff. But it does give you a major amount of not only historical perspective, but also it gives you inspiration. That's the right word. It gives you inspiration of what human mind can do, and any human mind can do. It's not like these people are special on a human level. They're just like you and I. Yes, they've gone through training and everything else that far supersedes abilities that you and I have, because we haven't gone through the training. But essentially, they're just people. And then if you look at it from, like David was saying earlier about learning, some of the things they learned and trained, everything else. If you think about it, when we're born, we don't know anything anyway. Everything we do, everything we are, has to be learned. Because, with few exceptions of talent, people like Gina Fidel, for example, in terms of artistic talent, in terms of everything else that needs to be done, we all have to learn it all. People sometimes come up, how do you know all this computer stuff? Well, guess, I learned it by, basically educating myself inside. Certainly I wasn't born with it, just like you're not born. Oh, this is so hard. It's not hard. Just put some effort into it, you'll be able to do it. I'm not any smarter than anybody else and stuff. So it's one of these situations where, people, if you play drums so well, I don't play drums well. I play drums well better than Joe on the street who doesn't know how to play drums, but that doesn't mean I play drums well. And so people have this impression that if you do something a little bit even better than they are, that you're immediately somehow some sort of a super being or something. And that's not true. Anybody can learn. Anybody can, like I said, unless you need to have talent, which is, I know Gina argued with me on this, but I'm totally convinced that no matter how much I learn how to draw, I will never paint or draw like she does. But like I said, if you put the talent aside, everything we are and everything we do had to be learned at some point from our parents, from our school, from our teachers, from our fellow people, from the books. And that's why we read books. That's why we watch movies. At least I do. Yeah. To learn something, to become better than what we are, to see what other people are doing. Because if you really look at it, like people say, well, you do whatever you do. Okay, like people do websites, and how do you do websites? Well, it's not different. It's you learn to do websites from previous people who used to do websites. Somebody came up with it. You got Tim Berners-Lee, who came up with World Wide Web and came up with the whole concept of hypertext and basic navigation using web pages, web servers, all of that. So they were first. Nobody did it before them. Okay, but if you go beyond that, it was constantly everybody learning from somebody else before them. And it just the way the whole history basically went from that time going forward. Gina has this immense talent. Gina, sorry, I'm putting you in the corner here, but it's on topic here. And so she's got this incredible painting talent, but at the same time, she went through school. She learned from all the original masters, and she had some teachers, everything else. It's not like she was painting as well as she was painting just when she was 1 year old. It doesn't work like that. So I think one of the key things in the book is where it's pushing the concept of this is what these people have gone through. That's the process they've gone through. And if you adopt similar processes and techniques in your own life, in your own business, you can certainly advance or improve what you're currently doing, possibly fix what's not working by utilizing some of these techniques and some of these ideas.
Yes, I think you're making, again, some really important points. The first one, which is very easy, is some of the films and the way they've been put together are very close to reality. If you go and watch Black Hawk Down, there are some incredible moments there. They have gone to a lot of trouble to recreate the training the people had, to recreate the dialogue straight from accounts, etc. So I think that's a really good film to watch if you feel like it, because you'll see some true to live heroic moments. And that also becomes part of our learning process, what you said. But essentially, everything we do in terms of motivation has to have a clearly worked out reason of why, because it takes energy. In order for us to sustainably and consistently invest energy, we need to understand why we do it. So, when it comes, for instance, to your drum playing or Gina's dancing or my martial arts training or whatever that goes into it, there is something in our head that's tied into our identity that gives us an intrinsic reward, which has nothing to do with the extrinsic stuff. Okay, I'm not a prize fighter, you're not a drummer, and Gina is no longer a paid artist. But we still engage in these things because because we get something from them that justifies the cost, which is the effort involved. And that's exactly the same amount or type of thinking that needs to happen in everything else. So if you have a business, you have to work out what is it that you're going to invest in and why. And you need to understand that, really understand it. And then you make sure that everybody else understands it. And if it's simple enough to understand, it binds everybody together, you have a fantastic team, and everything works well. The same thing works with the military. You have all these different people, but they bind together, they're bound together through very simple, very direct things which have nothing to do with honor and bravery and the flag and the country and freedom. They have nothing to do with this. It's more human values that hold people together. It's the loyalty and allegiance to each other. The fact that ultimately, in a tight situation, we look out for each other. And that's a very human thing. And that's what keeps them alive. That's what makes them heroes in the battlefield. You think, these guys are amazing. They have fantastic training, fantastic weaponry. They go there and they're really brave. And no, they're not. They're really afraid and really scared. And the only thing that helps them overcome all that is their training and the fact that there's something beyond just themselves that they do it for. And that is always they do it for each other. And for each other, they're prepared to die. You think in a situation like that, how can they justify it? Well, it's that human thing, that human connection. And we feel it at a family level, instinctively, most of the times. If we form a community, we feel it at a community level, where we're prepared to do incredible things to safeguard other people, and we can't justify that. It's an emotional thing, but it's the right kind of motivation. So I think the question for us moving forward is, okay, we have all these things. All these things make us superhuman. None of that is special. We all have them. So essentially, we all have the ability to be special. We all have the ability to do the right thing. We all have the ability to make the right decisions and the right choices. So why don't we? And that's the magic question, because if we understand why we don't, then we also understand how we can. And that's, the book helps you do that in many ways, because it acts like a mirror or a prism. You think, that's what's stopping me. So then I can become better. But it's always, it's a platform, it's a springboard. It will allow you to get higher and further, and then you become amazing.
Right.
Well, I like Michelle's explanation about the differentiation between tactics and strategy, because oftentimes I think, especially in business, people have a strategy of what they want to do, the why, I'm doing this because, or I have this, thing. But one of the things I notice when I'm working with clients, when it gets down to, why are we doing this particular thing as opposed to that particular thing, they're clueless. They have no idea what the tactics are to employ to get to their goal, whatever it might be. And I think it's important to differentiate, and also in our lives, because, well, I think about when I had cancer 5 years ago, and the medical people kept telling me I had this wonderful attitude, and I'm like, what other attitude could there possibly be? It's cancer, get rid of it. I was like, what else is there? And but then, post-op, I guess, was the major differential, because I was like, okay, cool. Now it's time to get ready to heal and do all the things I need to do. And, you know, I was out walking the next day and people said, what, you just had surgery, you're out walking? I said, yeah, there's nothing wrong with my legs, you know, and like, but that those little things that build up over time and that are then become incorporated into the strategy are your tactics. They're your tactics in your business. You need the strategy because you need to, I used to call it the overview. Especially when I worked in nonprofit organizations, you know, if you don't have the overview of what we're doing and why we're here, and you know, none of this other stuff is going to work, because you always have to keep the overview in mind while you're dealing with these details of daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly things that you need to do. The overview is so important that I think each business, because this is what we're talking about in the sniper mind, you know, for each business and then each individual within the business, we need our own personal tactics that are in alignment with what the strategy is. Is that making any sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's identity, right? Isn't it? I mean,
it is. You know, it is, David, it's what you've been saying for years. Be you. Be yourself. You know, and in order to look at that picture, and this is what Nina was talking about a little earlier, is, you know, who is the you? How do I look at myself? How do I accept myself? How am I comfortable with my shortcomings? And what can I do to ameliorate those shortcomings by getting some help in some way, you know, a substitute for that. So I don't know. I love this book. I truly believe if someone reads this book and goes through the work and starts daily basis, I believe this book is actually life-changing.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, that's the intention, really, in many ways, as I was going through it. The steps themselves are transformational, and from you know, in a military perspective, the people who go through all that, they come out totally different. And there's Nina with cake, and I love it.
No, this is 12 chapters. The book has 12 chapters.
12 chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the book. It's the correct wording for me too.
Cool. But you know, awesome. we all need to transform who we are. We all need to be better, always, and no exceptions. You know, we all need that.
Before we wrap it up here, one last thing I wanted to add, because I can, is that it's also, I think, it's extremely important for people to understand that all these suggestions and everything in the book is not going to do anything for you unless you want it. You need to want it, then you can make it happen. Because no matter how many people teach you things and everything else, if you really truly don't want it, and honest, being intellectually honest with yourself, if you don't really want to do any of this stuff, it's not going to help you in any way. It's just like reading, you know, story about, you know, trip to Mars, you know, the Martian book. It's very entertaining, but it doesn't do anything for you in terms of any kind of value. So if you really want for this change to occur, whatever that change may be, then this would be a tremendous help to you.
Oh, buy the book anyway, though. You know.
yeah, exactly. Buy the book.
Buy the book.
If you think this is a horrible book, then you can certainly walk all the way to Greece, and David will give you a refund. You have to walk, though, to get there.
Yes, you have to have proof that you have walked.
Exactly. It is an awesome book, and as you can see from some people here, obviously everybody here is friends with David's. But we're not friends with David because his name is David. I mean, there's definitely good reasons why we're friends. And at the same time, you know, all of us obviously wish him well, but all of us are definitely, you know, we're different people, different lives, different places on the map. But at the same time, all of us have exact same feeling after reading this book, that it's a great book, can be very, very helpful for people, not only in their personal life, but in their business life as well. Actually, that's what it was geared to be, is for the business life, but personal life can certainly be impacted positively also. And the book is, available right now. You can get it from thesnipermind.com, from davidamerland.com, from amazon.com. Gina, do you have it on your website?
No.
No, okay, so you can't get it from fedeyes.com, but you
No,
can
but
certainly.
I have been trying to think about a blog post, and then it will be, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So you can get it from Gina's blog. And by the way, read Gina's stuff. Gina does websites, and she has incredibly interesting perspective from many directions, because she, like I said, the woman has this unbelievable talent. I don't think I've met only one other person in my life who's as talented artistically as Gina is. And I met a bunch of people actually. And then we have Nina from Bulgaria, who is she also blogs, and she does a lot of public stuff. And like David was saying, they were just she was one of the key people in this conference they did in Bulgaria, in Sofia. And so she certainly gets around, but she's a fan of the book. And Zara is a writer herself, and she doesn't write about the mind, but she publishes books about ancient Italy and some things that very few people actually know anything about.
Ancient Rome, absolutely amazing. Yeah, exactly.
And so she's got books. You can find her books on ZaraAltair.com. She does blogging. She does podcasting. Not podcasting, but like she used to do these sectation hangouts. Do you still do that?
I don't do those hangouts anymore. I'm really focusing on writing. And that actually stems from a conversation with David several years ago.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, you see? There you go. And so in the end here, we're going to try to one more time to ask David to give us a hint about the new book.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
Well,
no,
I can't. I really can't. I'm sorry. All I'm going to say is that, it kind of, think of everything, every book I've written sort of builds onto the next step and the next.
So if you think about it, if you want to make a normal, you think about, here's a book on semantic search, on SEO, then Sniper Mind, and then whatever comes next in that row, that will give you a hint.
But and when you say Sniper, I know it's a huge leap, but it isn't really, because it's still semantic connections and analytics. So, the Sniper Mind is brain analytics.
As people used to say in Russia, to some people they like David, "Shtypl zdarov." You know what that means.
I still think so, yes.
With that said, I'd like to thank everybody for watching this. This was definitely not meant to be anything more than just a huge congratulations to David on the release of the new book. And we wish him all the best. And if anybody wants to say a few words before we wrap it up, by all means, thank you, everybody. Thank you, David.
I was going to say, guys, thank you so much. Okay, things are just beginning. We're entering a new phase and there's a new conversation, and let's hopeful, that everything that comes from it will actually build upon what we do moving forward. And I think that'd be awesome.
Anybody else? Any last words of wisdom?
Thank you, Oleg.
Yeah, that was a great idea, Oleg. Thanks.
Always a pleasure.
Excellent. I like the word excellent. Recently, Ro has been using it, and it's not perfect, but it's excellent.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you, David, for the book.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, David. Congratulations.
Thank you, and we'll talk again.
Yep. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.